All right, hello and welcome to EOA Candidate Conversations. My name's Wade Twilliger. I'm your host tonight, and we want to let you know before we get started with our candidate that tonight this stream is brought to you by the Committee to Elect Brent Clapp. Welcome, Brent.
Hey, thank you, man.
Yeah, how are you feeling tonight?
Well, good. This is a weird position to be in, to be the one that's being asked questions of. Yeah.
Oh, well, I have some hard-hitting questions,
Yeah.
but you can relax. I think we'll get through it tonight. You'll be okay.
Well, yeah, and I recruited you.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, these candidate conversations are open to other candidates to be able to have, and they can buy the hour, and they can have their own host, and I've kind of given you some directions of things I want to talk about, but I don't know. You've kind of taken that and made it your own and added stuff to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'd love to do actually is get a chance to know you on not just find out your background and your history and who is Brent Clapp, but maybe the lighter side of Brent Clapp to start with. So I've got a few would you rather questions that I'd love for you to answer. Let's start with this. Would you rather be stuck in a romantic comedy with your worst enemy or in a horror movie with your best friend?
The horror movie with my best friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Why is that your choice? What if your best friend gets...
Well, I suppose, but you could, there's the optimistic, you could team up and defeat the enemy.
Okay.
Or find hiding places together, I guess. I don't know.
You'll protect your best friend in this horror situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you rather be able to speak every language, so just be fluent in every language in the world, or be able to talk to animals?
Ooh.
These are some of the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah,
tonight.
yeah, these are, I don't know, I think talking, I'm a people person and I love people, but I have, people that speak a different language than you are not always right next to you, but animals are everywhere. Yeah.
There you go. Okay,
right.
so animals.
Yeah, animals, yeah.
Okay. Would you rather have a knife when you need a spoon or a spoon when you need a knife?
A knife when I need a spoon, or a spoon when I need a knife. So, which of them, probably the knife.
Really?
Yeah, because you can, you can scoop stuff up on a knife.
Have you ever tried to scoop peas on a knife?
Well, you know how they do that in Australia and other countries, is they literally do this, the funniest thing ever. Actually, then they'll use either their knife or the back of their fork, and they'll put potatoes on the back of their fork, and then they'll stick the peas to it. Yeah.
See, we're finding out that you're a well-cultured candidate through these questions.
Yeah, I don't know.
Insight into that. Okay, just a couple more. Would you rather be a baby with the mind of an adult or an adult with the mind of a baby?
I probably a baby with the mind of an adult.
It was a funny cartoon, Baby Talk.
Oh, that's true.
That? Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But it didn't really have the mind of a. Oh, I see. Yeah, because in that movie it was a baby that had the mind of an adult, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. Last one. Would you rather meet Bigfoot or an alien?
Ooh, yeah. It's funny because Kyle and I have had this conversation on. He vigorously thinks that there is no Bigfoot.
Okay.
But there certainly might be aliens, yeah. And so what was the question again?
Who would you rather meet? Yeah.
Probably aliens.
Aliens, okay.
Yeah.
Any reasoning behind that?
Well, I don't know. What would you gain from knowing a Bigfoot? You would be terrified, or you might be a meal, or...
If you could prove either existed, you would gain a lot.
Right. It's true. But,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But if you just meet them, it's word of mouth.
If you just meet them, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get to know some more about who you really are, and not just would you rather.
Okay.
If I had a chance to go and spend some time with people who've been around you for the last 20 plus years in Eastern Oregon and ask them, who is Brent Clapp, what do you think your peers or the people that you know well would say about who you are?
Wow. Well, I think they would say that I really try and be good and kind and generous. I think they would say that I am a person who's made mistakes, but I know how to recover from mistakes. I know how to apologize. I know how to do everything I can to make things better, I think they would say that I am curious and that I listen, I mean, those are things I really work at. Curious just comes naturally to me. I'm kind of a lifelong learner. And, but, I mean, I really work at listening, and it takes work. And not just listening, but understanding and trying to put myself in the place of that person. So, and I've worn different hats in my life over the last 27 years that I've been in LeGrand. Some of those people know me as a leader. Some of them know me as a singer, of all things. Some of them, they know me because I was in theater and have been in theater. Some of them know me as a digital TV station owner, a photographer,
So you're ready to sing for us tonight?
No, that's not.
You don't want to show those skills off right now?
No, but I mean, I guess I mean, I don't know. I think they'd say that, the people that do know me and know the leadership part of me, they would say that, I'm a leader.
Great.
Yeah.
As we continue to ask some of these questions, I also want to let you know that you can submit questions to Brent or comments on the EOA Facebook stream. We would ask that all questions be relevant to Union County and the county commissioner position, and also a reminder that the county commissioner position is a non-partisan race. So if you'd like to submit those questions, we would love to hear from you tonight. Okay, so of those things that the peers would say about you, what might be the biggest misconception that they would say?
I don't know. I think some people might think that I like attention. I mean, anybody who starts a digital TV station and then ends up in front of the camera, But it's kind of funny when we started and Will Bowman was working for me. I mean, it came to well, who's going to be in front of the camera? And I'm like, well, I'm the boss. You are, because I'm a tech person, and it's really hard to be technical and be in front of the camera at the same time,
Sure.
And although, a certain amount of leadership requires that you step up and step into the light and so on and so forth, it's pretty draining for me. It's not something that I relish. Now, there are moments where it's where I know that this is a kind of a sacred moment, and but they probably wouldn't know that actually there are times that I'm very thin-skinned. I'm a fairly sensitive person. You can't be a good listener and be intuitive and not be sensitive at the same time. And so there are times that people will just say something that is insensitive, and I'll be like, it kind of hurts. First I'm mad, but underneath I'm hurt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that leads well into this next question then, because part of being a leader and being a little bit in the limelight, someone who's stepping up into this commissioner position, means you're going to have some tough skin.
Right.
So what have you done, and maybe it's two questions. Why do you want to be the county commissioner, first of all? And what about your life experiences and just where you are now has prepared you for that position? And speaking of being able to now, maybe knowing that you've had some sensitivity or that those things can hurt, prepare yourself to step up into this position and lead when you need to lead and not let it affect you too much and move on.
Well, I heard someone say that was super powerful, and they were talking about being afraid of a task, being afraid of something. And it finally came to the point to where they realized that what they needed to do was greater than their fear. And I think everybody faces that at some time or another. It's my nature is to withdraw. My nature is to not step out, not take the risk. But what it is that I'm doing is more important than it's worth the risk. I mean, you leverage that inside of you. So I grew up around I have really had great role models, great leaders that have they weren't necessarily traditional leaders, but they were servant leaders, and a lot of times when I was working for them, they just took me along. They just took me to meetings, and I felt like the little kid at the big kid's table. But through that, I saw how other leaders modeled leadership. I saw what they did, and there are times that the moment when they stood up for something that nobody else did, or there's with leadership, you have to know when to shut up, And I mean, like if you're at a board meeting, and I mean, I'm the president of La Grande Rotary, and I'm leading a group of leaders. I mean, these people are business owners. Many of them make way more money than what I do. I mean, they're just very successful at what they do, and they're intelligent, and they're smart, and it would be absurd of me to state something that they had already stated. I mean, and so then part of leadership is knowing when you have something to say and when just to get out of the way and let other people to do it. So, I was a youth pastor for 5 years in Seattle, 6 years in Seattle, then moved here, was a senior pastor for 8 years, learned how to run a board. And the thing about ministry and other volunteer organizations is you understand how to motivate volunteers. And it's a different model than motivating paid staff. It's different and it's not, because nobody really gets paid enough to do sometimes really challenging things. Mm-hmm. So they have to be inspired, and you have to give them entrance and let them be a part of the process, so there's buy-in and so on. But those experiences, and so then again, I was a part of Chamber of Commerce, part of that board for 3 or 4 years, and again, super bright people. I mean, and just frankly, there were too many people on that board, and I didn't really have anything to contribute there. And at the same time, La Grande Main Street downtown, I was on that board, and they needed encouragement. They needed, and so I became president of La Grande Main Street downtown, resigned my position at the Chamber of Commerce board, and then was a part of helping the Main Street downtown board get through COVID, which was crazy, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So anyhow, all
Everyone
of those
knows.
Experiences just kind of led me to a place of wanting to invest and continuing to invest. And through our TV station, which we love giving to the community. And we give to the community by showing a spotlight on things that are important, and that are good. And just through the leadership things that I was doing, and then through the investment that I was investing, which also gave me influence and leadership, then this position just seems like a natural place for me to take the leadership investment that I've been making. I wouldn't run against Donna, I like the commissioners that we have. The only reason I'm really running is because there's a vacancy, and I think I'm a good candidate for that position.
Okay, Thank you. Another question that is maybe a little bit more just about you, and then I want to get into some leadership stuff. What makes you angry? What gets under your skin?
What really makes me angry is when people are disingenuous. And part of that is super subtle. I'm beginning to realize that a lot of my life is lived in the nuance. I mean, people can come into a room and people can interact, and I just notice things that sometimes other people don't. And if I know that somebody they're appearing to be one thing, but I really doubt that is their motive comes from a place of sincerity, then that bugs me. Mm. And that bugs me in our business too. It's one of the reasons why when we sell stuff, I don't sell stuff that I know that's not going to work. I'm not going to sell a product, an advertisement, or build a video, or whatever the case might be, I mean, now there are times people come and say, we want you to make a video that does this. And it's like, well, yeah, but who's your audience? Well, our audience is this. Well, but that's not the video that you're making, I mean, and so that gets me. And because I think it's dishonest, and I mean, I apply that to government too, because there are times you'll have a problem, you'll go in and see someone and say, this is a problem, I'm having a problem with my building, or I'm having a problem, I don't know, whatever it is. You're trying to get through government red tape, and you go in and you ask a question. That person on the other side of the desk, and I've experienced this, they know the question you're asking, but you haven't asked it quite in the right way. And so rather than saying, I think the question that you're trying to ask is, rephrasing it, and then, because for me, I just want to get from point A to point B. I just give me the answer so that I can grieve or adapt or whatever the case. And so that kind of dishonesty, that's as much as lying as far as I'm concerned. When somebody understands the question that you're asking, but you've asked it in the wrong way, and you probably get this in the medical field all the time. I know you have, because you and I have talked, and you've said, I think, Brent, what you're wanting to know is. And when people don't take that extra step, and they know that they're not doing it, they're not taking the extra step because they're trying to protect their position or they're trying to do something, I think that's lying. Yeah.
Being genuine, it's important.
Yeah.
All right, maybe give us just a little bit about how you got to Eastern Oregon, in case maybe somebody's tuning in here and they don't really know you. Like, where did you come from? How did you land in Eastern Oregon? And then I promise we'll get into some leadership questions.
Okay. So I grew up in Casper, Wyoming, family of 3, the youngest of 3 kids, and my father was a county agent. My mom was a homemaker. My grandparents homesteaded in Wyoming, so I grew up around farming and ranching. And in Wyoming, you do those things. My grandpa used to have a thing that said if I had $1 million, I would ranch until it was all gone, And so
Which isn't much money these days.
No, it's not.
Probably a lot more when your grandpa said that.
Yeah. I mean, so I grew up working hard and knowing how to, and watching my parents and my dad work hard. And so went to Northwest Nazarene College, university. It's called university now. It's college then, and was studying to be a minister. And during that time, that's when I really first got into media. As I was studying, I worked in the educational media department at NNC. Again, had a great mentor, a great leader who mentored me and helped me, and fostered my love for media. So graduated from college and ended up teaching at NNU for 4 years, teaching photography, audio, video recording, and that type of thing. Was a professional photographer for 4 years, so 8 years between that time, and traveled internationally. Loved that. And then I became a youth pastor in Seattle, Washington. And, I love the city. It was weird, but what I do, I love people. That's the deal. And I loved youth. And and it was the urban environment was super unique. Seattle was not then what it is now. And so was there for 6 years, and then my family and I moved here to La Grande in 97 and went through a divorce and all of the drama and tragedy, and have a lot of, there's a section of people who know me from the time that I pastored. There's probably more people now that don't even know about that part of it. Tanya and I got married in 2007, and at that time I didn't even own a camera. Worked as a warehouse manager for a while, got laid off during the economic downturn. We got a loan and started Brent Clapp Productions at that time. And so, so that's kind of how we got here. Yeah, so it's been super interesting. I was so far out of technology, and now it's like every day, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it's probably about time for us to take a break.
Okay.
And then as I've been promising. We'll get into some leadership questions and some issues that are going on for Eastern Oregon. Also want to remind you before we do take a quick break that you can bring your questions to EOU Facebook on the stream, and we will be able to bring in some questions from the crowd. So yeah, let's take a break.
My name is Eric Valentine. I've known Brent Clapp since the 1990s, and I'm supporting him in this race for county commissioner in the May primary. He's always been very active, very devoted to this community. He was one of the first people to get into videography, filming various concerts, weddings, school events to help individual families preserve memories of very significant events. From there, he expanded into filling a niche that was vitally needed in this community, namely Eastern Oregon Alive. Through this business, I think he's gotten to know this community very well. It has given him very good ideas about what the community needs, the kind of information that a county commissioner can well use in a tenure during the next 4 years. Brent is one of those very trustworthy fellows who, when he makes a commitment to a job, to a volunteer role, he gets the job done. He's self-motivated, and he has the ability to motivate other individuals to come alongside him to complete the project.
All right, welcome back to Candidate Conversations. Again, I'm your host, Wade Twilliger. I do want to just say that I had mentioned before the break to send your comments to EOU Facebook. Correction, that's EOA, Eastern Oregon Alive Facebook, and then you can get your questions answered here on the show. But you have somebody who already has mentioned something.
So Crystal LeGrand just want you to know that all of the responses are like off the cuff. Now, the one thing that is that, you know, when you're running, you're asked the same questions over and over again. And so, yeah, I guess if it sounds scripted, that's a compliment in some manner.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. he did not know many of these questions I'm asking.
Yeah.
I just came up with myself.
Yeah.
So, all right. You are a Christian.
Right.
So how does your faith fit in to your leadership?
Well, I would say that it has come, I mean, it's like that is, it's such a, and I told you to ask that question.
That is one that you
because it's something I want to talk about, you know, because, but it's so vast, and I've thought about, you know, if you did choose that, how it's so, but I think that the way that it comes down to the daily nuts and bolts of my life, there are some believers that, and I don't mind them. I mean they're good friends, but and every other, and there's not even a but. It's just how they are. They wear their Christianity on them, and I'm totally good for that. I mean, I understand that. I used to say there are some people I call way Jesus that like pray for a parking spot. I'm certainly not that. You know, I'm one of those believers that I will push everything as far as I mean, I personally feel like it's not my job to ask God to rescue me. I'm going to push it as far as I possibly can to do everything that I can and just pray that God makes up the gap. Now, how does that make up in my own life? Makes up in my own life that, number one, as I understand, I'm super frail. I'm imperfect. I have failed miserably at times. But a call to Christ means that you got to do everything to make that right. You have to apologize. You have to work at it. And, you know, when I left the pastorate, it would have been much easier for Tanya and I to have started over in another town someplace. But I was determined that I was going to be a part of healing right here in LeGrand. And so that required a lot of hard work on my part. So that means that I'm not very judgmental of people because I'm pretty tolerant of wherever people are in their life. And when I run across believers who are judgmental or they're impatient or they're critical or whatever, my response is they just have not run into God's grace yet. And unfortunately, sometimes the way you run into God's grace is like failing miserably, and then it's that point that you realize, man, I have to have God to get redeemed in some manner, to find some place. So there's a lot of people that I run into that they might not even know that I'm a believer, because I really believe that good thinking, good decisions, things that are fair, there's a whole bunch of things that you could say a believer believes in. Well, a lot of those things people have in common. A lot of those things are just in common with people who are good people, and so I think that the decisions that I make in the business, it doesn't, whether I'm a believer or not, I'm still going to be honest. I'm still going to not overcharge people. I'm still going to not take advantage of people. I'm going to go to a huge amount of effort to correct a story if it's wrong. And all of those things apply in my leadership wherever it might be. So anyhow, I don't know if that covers it or not.
Yeah, I think it answers that. One of the things that I think is an interesting question to follow that up with.
Yeah.
And you kind of touched on it, but you mentioned earlier that it's real. What makes you angry, what gets you upset, is when someone is not genuine.
Right.
When they're not who they really are.
Right.
So that's maybe my next question is, how do you balance that?
How do I reconcile that?
Yeah, how do you reconcile that with you want to make sure that you're not hiding who you are, so people aren't like, oh, okay, all behind the scenes you were trying to sneak in this or proselytize or whatever it might be, or you didn't really come out as showing that you're a Christian. So how do you balance that? You want to be who you are, you want to be genuine, but at the same time I get what you're saying. You're not trying to push something on others necessarily.
Well, part of, I get irritated. And so those are I guess, let me back up just a little bit. Number one is I think that even if everybody should be courteous. There's no reason to be openly hostile to people. There might be, there's probably 5 people on my hand that I've met in my life that I don't enjoy being with them, and I wouldn't go out of my way to be with them. But at the same time, if I am with them, I'm going to be polite, I'm going to be courteous, because I think that's part of being a professional person. That is what you do. And certainly you run into people in all walks of life. Maybe they don't fit into that 5 people, but they're just not your favorite people. You're not going to hang out with them. But you still being courteous and kind. See, I think I haven't talked about that, but I think it's a huge thing. And going back to the believer thing, it drives me crazy when somebody wears their Christianity and they're unkind. That is like, you have to excuse me for just a minute, but at some point I'd like to have a bumper sticker that says, you can't call yourself a Christian and be an asshole, because you can't. But on the same hand,
some people would say, some people have proven that they can.
Well, yeah, right. Well, if I go too far down that road, then I'm judging the other direction too, But the answer is that, there's times that there's a lot of self-talk. There's a time that it's like, I've got to bolster myself up. I had an incident today where it's like, I as a candidate, I knew I needed to go someplace that I didn't love going, but part of it was like, not necessarily because I wasn't going there. I was going there because of a candidate, but I went there because that's what good people do. Good people step over stuff that's uncomfortable, and leaders have to do that all the time. You have to look past whatever this thing that might be irritating you and find some common ground and push things ahead. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, leadership.
Okay.
Talk about leaders doing that. You mentioned earlier with some leaders who have been effective in your past that they were servant leaders.
Yeah.
And there's different leadership models. So why don't you talk to us about your leadership style, your leadership model, and how that is effective in this commissioner position if you were to be elected?
Well, and I'm still trying to get my head around how those three commissioners work together and how important leadership is. And I frankly, I don't know yet because the three of them pass action together as a committee, essentially, So, but, I mean, I think that, the people that work for me, my employees that have worked for me, and over a long period of time, they like the ownership that I give them. And so it doesn't matter if it's a volunteer or somebody that you pay, they're doing something because they're getting something out of it. Now, let's say that you're paying them as an employee. Well, in our business, I can't pay a videographer. Bennett could probably walk out of here and go in anywhere else in an urban area and make twice as much as what he's making here. But what I can give him is I can give him experience and I can give him ownership, and part of that ownership is power over the decisions to make themselves. Okay, so and I hang on very carefully to when I was an underling, when I was an employee. I know those experiences, and I remember when I felt humiliated, or I felt second guessed, or I felt micromanaged, or whatever the case might be. I remember those things, and so then everything in my head is I don't want them to feel that. At the same time, there are some times that it's like, you have to say, look, you got to hit the box. You got to check the boxes. Now and with our video projects, there's all of these guys are artists that are working for. I don't know that I would call myself an artist, but an artist they just have a different kind of a mentality. But the thing that is super important to them is that they have ownership over ownership meaning they have some decision in what it is that they're going to do. So then my thing is to say, everything that we do, every decision that they make really needs to be intentional. And so if they choose a font or they choose something they're going to do, then it needs to be intentional. They need to be able to defend that. The same hand, if they come up against me and say, hey, this is why I did it, then well, you're the one that's been working on it, so you get to make the decision. So that's one of my philosophies, is that the people that are really doing the work should be as close to the decision as possible, because that's what's inspirational to them. That is how it is that they work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what inspired me as an employee, and so I think that's what inspires them too.
Yeah. An important part of leadership is making sure that the grassroots is getting the information to you so you know what really needs to get done.
Right.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about some specific issues for Eastern Oregon. What improvements do you think need to be made in Union County?
Well, every candidate is supposed to come up, what are your three things, and again, that was a little daunting for me because I get a little annoyed by candidates just pulling three things out of the air that is not impossible, that's impossible to get done. So, but we have, the thing I realize and that I know is that over the last several years, we've had younger couples that are moving into the area, younger families that are moving into the area because they can work remotely. They're moving here, and maybe they're professionals, maybe they're providers at the hospital or whatever the case might be. They're moving in, and one of the big selling points is they love Mira, they love skiing, they love all of the access to that's happening right out there. But there are some what I call choke points. One of those choke points is that we still don't have air travel, commercial air travel in and out of the airport. So let's say somebody moves here and they're working remotely, great place to live. They still got to get in and out of here from time to time. without having to drive 2 hours to get to a major airport. So I think we've gotten by for a long time with that, but I think that's a really important thing. And along with that, there's a lot of people that talk about shopping local. Well, did you know that shopping local means also using our local hospital? Do you mean that shopping local means considering sending your kids to Eastern Oregon University? I mean, those are decisions that, I know that that's personal for some people, but that kind of, our biggest employers have to continue to be supporters. The hospital, almost 800 people now are employed, and it makes a big difference when people go get a knee surgery somewhere out of town, which, by the way, if you're getting a knee surgery and you're going out of town, you haven't met the ortho team up at the hospital, So, anyhow, so and I think the other thing that I'm really passionate about, and these aren't broken. These aren't things that are broken. These are things that we just have to continue to tune. The other thing I'm super passionate about is youth. Part of it was I was a youth pastor for 6 years. Part of it is that, a lot of the people that we hire are younger. And so I have a passion for the well-being of kids. And during this last several years, coming out of COVID, Measure 110, it was like this perfect drug storm for people to just, it's just been awful. Even kids that have delved, they started taking drugs when they're in junior high or high school. There's been no negative consequences for them continuing to be on drugs. And so all of that negative disincentive has been removed. So, that's a little broad of a statement. But I think that what has come about is that we really need to have anti-drug education younger in public schools. And kids that are in 4th and 5th, 6th grade, by the time that anti-drug education hits them in middle school, the kids that are going to make poor decisions, they've already started making them.
Yeah. Well, let's do one more question before we head to another break, and I'm just going to follow up on that. So you say there's no incentive.
No disincentive.
No disincentive.
Yeah.
So what is the incentive to get, because it's not just drugs. It's not, what you see has happened with the pandemic and since the pandemic is we're just so much more wired. We got, some of us got more reclusive. And you've got kids, it seems like at this point too, that there's another side of it where we know there's another epidemic where there's not as much activity. There's so much more distraction with electronics, and some of it's good. Some of the technology is great, but it also, there's youth that's their life.
Right.
They're not out connecting. How do we incentivize, how do we motivate getting Eastern Oregon healthy as well, these kids out and active and engaging and using their minds in a productive way? And drugs and alcohol are one thing, they're really easy to point at, but there's a whole nother side that's going on with the youth today where, I'll just say when I was a kid, I've lived here for 40 years.
Yeah.
I could drive around in the summertime and the basketball courts were full and people were out playing football on football fields and pick up baseball games, and now you can cruise around in the summer and a lot of times all those places are empty.
Right. And I don't have an answer for tough questions. How old are your kids? They're like your oldest.
They range from kindergarten to a senior in high school.
Yeah. So, the culture of kids has just changed. And I get that because my grandkids, they're a span too, I think that, let me step back just a little bit and tell you. So there's a lot of problems that I don't have the answer to, and I'm not the smartest person often in the room, and I don't try and be. What I do know is that I was on a board once, a couple of years ago, and they expressed that they had supported anti-drug programs in the past, and they had given money to that, and they said, well, we're not going to give that anymore because that program is just not functioning. I don't blame them. But they essentially, our money is going to be spent if we spend it somewhere else. We know that it's going to be. And my immediate thing was like, we can't just give up. That is my mantra often that drives me is that, I don't know how to solve the problems, but I'm connected to a lot of people that are a lot smarter than and I know how to get them around the table and lock the door until they come up with some solutions. That's that's my skill. And this little digital TV station has been so cool because in this setting, in this studio, I've sat across and asked questions of many, many people that are totally outside of my experience. Some of them are totally outside of my views or whatever the case might be, but still it has connected me with so many people. And it takes a lot of different people from a lot of different persuasions to solve problems. And you don't know what you've been in meetings where it's like you talk about it, pretty soon the conversation dies down and everybody just kind of sits there, and I call it stew time. They're just stewing. And then all of a sudden somebody says, what do you think about this? And suddenly there's an idea that's totally outside the box. And those are the kinds of, they don't happen unless you get the right people in the room and you make them stay until they figure something out. So the bigger culture question of how to get kids, you're the parent, dude. That's
my job.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good insight into how you think there. We appreciate that. Getting to know Brent Clapp a little better and find out what he thinks are priorities for Eastern Oregon as we continue. But we're going to go to break. I want to let you know again that you can send your questions or comments to EOA Live Facebook or EOA Facebook, and we will get those questions answered. But let's go to break, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Hi, my name's Bennett Welch. I've worked as the producer at Brent Clapp Productions for around 7 years now. I started out as an intern back in the summer of 2016, and during my time working for Brent, I've seen him involved in a lot of different roles in the community. For a while, he served as the president for LeGrand Main Street. He served as a board member for the Union County Chamber of Commerce, and currently he serves as the president for LeGrand Rotary Club. Brent demonstrates a lot of leadership qualities that I think would make him very fit for Union County Commissioner. He listens and he's open-minded, and he will stand up for the little guy if need be. And I think that these are really important qualities for a Union County Commissioner, because as a Union County Commissioner, it's a nonpartisan role where, you're essentially an advocate for the county. You have to listen to your community and listen to what problems they're having and advocating for the best solution for your community. That's why I think that Brent is a good fit for Union County Commissioner, and why I will be voting for Brent Clapp for Union County Commissioner.
My name is Linda Gleason, and I am a retired pharmacist in LeGrand, and my husband and I have lived in LeGrand for 45 years.
Well, I'm Tim Gleason. Brent is a natural leader. He's exuberant, he's a hard worker, and he's touched so many parts of the valley, so many components of our community.
Brent is an extremely intelligent, capable, talented man. I feel that Brent has an amazing capacity for getting things done, and he's not a bit shy about going out and knocking on doors and speaking. He's a very excellent speaker, and I saw that one of his goals is to see if we can get the airport going again so that people can fly in and out of LeGrand. When we first came to LeGrand, there was commercial air coming here, and I know that if he says that's something he wants to do, he'll do everything possible to get it done.
Also, I think he's a good listener in terms of what the voters want. And I think he, and his communication is one of his assets, both listening and also probably being the messenger in Salem or wherever. He's also very, very good at solving problems locally. So he's my candidate because I think he brings all his gifts and talents, intelligence, leadership. He's just totally committed to this community and county.
All right, welcome back to EO Alive Candidate Conversations. I'm your host, Wade Twilliger. We've got Brent Clapp here. Just to remind you that this stream is brought to you by the committee to elect Brent Clapp. I have a couple more questions around basically some Eastern Oregon questions, and then we want to get into some vision questions for you, okay? One of the things I want to talk about, though, is in the last election cycle, you had a video that streamed live here that you chose to pull down personally. You want to comment on that?
Well, I mean, I think I did about a 10-minute video on that at the time and explained why it was and the circumstances for people who might not know. There was a forum. It's so strange because there were 4 city council races that were open then, and they were all contested. Now there's 4 city council races that are open and nobody's running for those. I mean, there's nobody running against them. Anyhow, one of the things that boggles me about politics. Anyhow, I got a call late, that, hey, there's a forum tonight. Will you come stream it? And we had that particular group of candidates was a little contentious, and so we had a previous forum, and it had taken a lot of work to kind of keep things corralled. Well, I did not have control over this, or any input into this forum showed up, and it became more of a debate than it did a forum. Now, in a forum, the moderator asks a question, somebody answers, and so on and so forth, and then the next person answers, and well, there's no rebut. I mean, in a forum, there's no rebut because, so in other words, if if I'm in a forum and I say something bad about somebody, well, if their turn and answering that question has already gone by, then they don't have any chance of defending themselves, which isn't a fair situation. And I went home and just felt like it wasn't fair. I mean, it very much hooks into the thing of that I've told you the kind of person that I am, and I mean, there's a side of me that is like, I will defend the weak person. I will defend the weakling. I mean, that is part of who it is that I am. And there's, that probably goes. I'm the youngest of 3. My next oldest brother grew up with some mental challenges, and he was a foot or 2 taller than I, and I ended up getting in fights on his behalf. So there's a very deep-seated thing in me to where, and I described it at the time. It was like I was on the playground and I was watching somebody get the crap beat out of them, and I'm not just going to stand by and do that. The bottom line is that it just went against who it was that EOA Live TV is, and so anyhow, it was an interesting situation. So.
Well, thank you. On your website, you list some local businesses and organizations that you've donated to over the last several years with either cash or comping product services. What are some of these that you are most proud of about sponsoring?
Well, we have been that I'm a big supporter of youth and Youth for Christ, and what it is that they do has been just really important over the years. And so, since they started the banquet, Kim and Kevin Rainey have been there 14 or 15 or 16 years now. And when they started a banquet and raising funds, then we started producing those videos for them. And over the course of time, we've comped them 50% of the cost of those videos. And we've done that. We've done that traditionally with a lot of different organizations. We've been a big supporter of Elgin Opera House and helped them with that. And there's a camp, there's the coolest camp, there's a camp up in Wallowa County called Creating Memories for Disabled Children. A lot of people know it, that camp, because that used to be the old Boy Scout camp, and the Boy Scouts still do use that. But there was a flood back in early 80s, and it wiped out their main dining hall, and that camp sat really vacant for years and years. And really proud of what I've done there. That, I mean, what the camp does is exactly what the name is. That's an awful long name, Creating Memories for Disabled Children. And I work on their branding. It's like, really, that's the name? But it defines who it is that they are. But I mean, I think that a lot of what I love doing, I guess the other thing is we've invested this last year, we've invested quite a sum of money, I don't know, maybe $10,000 in a project that is suicide awareness. And it's for a group called Confident Companions. And again, there's a long story there. Back in 2014, I did a recording of a family over in Baker City that had lost 2 sons to suicide within 4 years apart from each other, and captured that video and just had nothing to do with it, because it put me in this spot of like, I could tell their story and then everybody would be panicked the way that they were, And so that has just been a real calling almost for me, is to help those kinds of organizations. So, I mean, we've done a lot, but the things that really make a difference in the lives of people, that is really precious to us. And that's why we do it all the time. Yeah.
20 plus years in this area, right? Living in Union County, is that about right?
27.
27 years.
Yeah, moved here in 97.
So 27 years in Union County, and knowing these organizations, being here, investing in them, it gives you some perspective on some history, current issues, and also some vision, I would imagine, for the future. So what is your vision for Union County?
Well, I think my first vision is to have a vision. I mean,
depends on what kind of vision you're looking for. We
Right.
can use some of the drugs we talked about earlier could give you some visions.
No, I mean, I think that part of, I don't know how much. I mean, I know that I've spent quite a bit of time talking and trying to get prepared for this role. I mean, I've been to every commissioner meeting since we started. I've met with a bunch of different people and so on and so forth, trying to get my head around. And like I said, I'm really supportive of the county commissioners that we have. I do know that I haven't heard of a vision that is like, in other words, the dreams that I see are the airport guy, who I met with. He has a vision for his area. The sheriff's department, Cody, has a vision for his particular area, whatever it might be. I don't know that there's somebody in, and Paul and you guys, I'm really sorry if I'm, stepping out, but I haven't heard of a vision. I think that part of what, and by that I mean, where does the county where do they want the people, where do they want the county to be 10 years from now? Where do they want the airport to be 10 years from now? Where do they want Mirror to be 10 years from now? Now, I'm sure those plans exist, but they're not being talked about. And part of pushing things forward is not only planning them, but communicating them. You look at the Pendleton Airport. Somebody 30 years ago said, this would be a great place to have a UAS, unmanned aircraft systems test site. Somebody said that. It was like, who would have ever thought that it would be in Pendleton, Oregon? But they started talking about it, and they pushed it, and they listed the things off of this is what it's going to take for us to get there. They had buy-in. They looked for grant money. I mean, all of that kind of thing has to happen. So I don't know that I have I kind of come back to that we can't do nothing thing. That's the thing I know.
Yeah.
Is that I'm not happy with the status quo, because in the long run it doesn't do us any good. I mean, our population has been about the same population that it has been for the last 20, 30 years. I mean, I think there probably were 13,000 people in La Grande when you were a kid here. Yeah. So
Absolutely, yep.
now the good side of that is that, people they've died and other people have been born. I mean, it's maintained. And in this day and age, that is something, But, one little wrong move. I mean, if for something happened to EOU, something happened to a major employer, I mean, it would devastate the community. And so I mean, we just have to keep pushing and looking ahead, and not only that, but talking about that vision, whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the empowering others in their positions and finding out what their vision is, because they've been, like you said earlier, doing the work. They've been doing the job. They have the visions for their area of work. Well, we've just got a few minutes left.
Okay.
So maybe I'll finish like this. What question haven't I asked you that you wish I would have asked you because you're just burning to get it out?
I don't know. I don't know that I have. I mean, we've. I don't have one. I mean, I don't know. What do you? I mean, is there anything that's occurred to you that's like, oh, that's interesting?
Well, it's all very interesting, but what I would say is, with just a few minutes left, what I would love to hear from you is what makes you the best candidate for this position. I mean, what separates you from the field? The field is pretty large at this point. What's going to cause somebody to say, yeah, this is why I should vote for Brent Clapp?
Well, and that is super. I mean, I told you before we were on the air that that is not the spot where I like to be, I mean, my nature is that, like I said, if I walk into a room full of leaders and they're functioning, then I'm not going to try and be the biggest
alpha.
The alpha. Yeah, I don't, there's nothing that I don't have that desire to always be in charge. Now, the same hand, on the same hand though, if there are times, and you'll see that, I know you do that too, you'll see there'll be a sea of people, they'll have a task, and nobody is stepping forward, and you're in a conference, and hey, we got 5 minutes to take care of this, Well, I mean, I will step up and be that person.
Well, here's your moment.
Yeah,
You've got just a few moments. I'm asking you to be a leader and tell us why you're the best candidate.
So I would say that there are a lot of great. There's nine people in the race right now, and after May the 21st, then it'll be down to the top 2 vote getters. I don't think anybody is going to be, if somebody were to get more than 50% in May the 21st, and then the race would be over. There's so many people in the race, I don't think that that's possible. But when I look at the field, I mean, I can tell you what my hunches are, and then what I think people tell me. Okay, the thing that makes me unique is that I've been invested the entire time. I haven't. There's not from the minute I came into town in '97 until now, as leadership has called me into different places, I have stepped into leadership. I've been that person that wanted to support. How can I be better? I mean, there are times that I show up, and this is part of what a leader does. You show up at something, even though you're totally irrelevant at a particular moment, but you're there because you're supportive. And I do that. And we've done that, and then the TV position has not only have I invested leadership, but we've invested our money, and that money. I mean, I won't go into the finances of it all, but my staff gets paid, and we function, But the payment that I personally get is that I get to make a difference in the lives of Eastern Oregonians. And I see that. People say, we love the coverage you do. I mean, it's the sports football, it's the game, and all those things we try and help that they're going to pay for themselves. But like, I mean, the Union County Commissioner Forum and the past Commissioner Forums that we've done, we don't get a dime for all of that, but that's about an expense of probably $1,000 at least for us to pay the employees and go out there and put it on the network and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So I mean, the personal leadership record has been continual. I'm not, there are some people that I feel like are kind of parachuting into the race, for lack of a better term, and they're catching up. They're trying to catch up. Like, okay, what's going on in Union County? Well, I don't have to do that, and that we've given. And I think that in the right moment, I'm not afraid. I guess that's the third part. Is I'm not afraid to say, there might be a better way. Can we be more out there about what it is that we need to do? I'm a fierce. I mean, one thing that people may or may not know is that I am doggedly determined. So, meaning that when it comes to getting answers, I don't like people being disingenuous, And so I will ask them until I get to the bottom. I get a really square answer. And so that makes me, and if I'm doing that on behalf of the county, or if I'm doing that on the behalf, and you saw that part of me, I did that on behalf of loved ones that were in the hospital during COVID. I mean, that's part of what it is, that if I'm doing that on behalf of someone else, I'm going to do it. Now, and so my thing is, don't tell me no, just tell me how. Just tell me how we need to get, so some of these issues is like, I'm not going to take a no. Somebody said, we can't build an airport, that's not possible. It's like, that's just the first step, tell me how. Tell me the steps how.
Okay.
So I think all of that makes me unique. There's, again, a lot of good people out there. And if I wasn't running, I would worry. I mean, I would have to think about who I would vote for. But I don't think any of them possess those skills. I think the other thing is this. We were going to quit, and then I went. The other thing is that there isn't any of them that have relationships across the spectrum of parties. None of them, And I think that a commissioner, it's really, if they're going to get something done, they really have to have built relationships with a number of people. You haven't angered them. They don't think that you're a bully. They don't, they know that you're kind. And so when you're asking things of them, you know that you're asking them on behalf of a good motive. And I think that that's a place where I kind of come from. So.
Okay. Well, don't tell me no. Tell me how. We have a question.
Yeah.
And I know we're running a little bit late, but
right.
Is it okay if we? Absolutely. Okay. So Alex McCadded has this question. I hope I said your last name right. What's your opinion on passenger rail service from Union County to Pendleton, where commercial air travel is already available? Want me to read that again?
No.
You got it?
No, and that, I don't know, my hunch is that the railroad is like a beast. I guess if I'm going to, what I mean is that convincing the railroad of anything is like an act of Congress. It really is. I think it's an easier lift. And I've had several people say, man, I would love to have Amtrak come through, back through. And I would too. That would be awesome.
And there's a revival of Amtrak right now. It's
spreading. Well, and that would be, I can say that if Amtrak comes through, it's going to come through on its own. There's going to be somebody that says we need to revive the Amtrak between Tri-Cities and Boise, and that just happens. I don't think. But that saying, I haven't looked into that very much, but I do know that the railroad is very difficult to convince to do things. Oftentimes the only the only way that you'll get to them is by you start with your senator or your representative, and it comes down. But I think that the airport will not happen without a concerted effort to say, we need this in Union County. And it's not just Union County. It's this that we could serve Wallowa County also. I mean, there's Pendleton serves Pendleton, and and they do some things really successfully. But I think that we have a bigger population. I think there's more of a need here in Union and Wallowa County than what there is in Pendleton.
Yeah, from Pendleton, I mean, you're not that far from Tri-Cities, or at
Right.
least you're a little closer, but here
Right.
you're definitely more isolated.
No,
Yeah.
but I've heard that question enough that I'll have to look into it. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. But
All
thanks,
right.
Alex.
Yeah, thank you, Alex, for the question. Well, we are at, past 7 o'clock now.
Okay.
So we got through those questions. Thank you so much for answering and letting me just, it was fun being able to ask you some questions
Yeah.
you weren't prepared for.
Was there anything else that you're like hanging out there?
I don't have any
I mean, you've known
burning
me a long
questions.
time.
I gave you.
I knew you as a teenager.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you answered the questions that were burning questions for me.
Yeah.
So unless you have something else that you'd like to add before we close.
No, I just want people to know that I want to hear from you. I mean, I can't know what the issues of people really are without hearing from them. And so, they can go to our website, which is brentforunioncounty.com, and they can, there's a place where they can submit questions. And one of the things that on the back of my business card that I hand out says, what are your top 3 concerns for Union County? I want to know that. I think that listening is the very least that a leader can do. I can't always fix a problem. Maybe it's out of my control, or maybe it's at the state level or whatever. But I can commiserate. I can understand. I can listen. And sometimes that in and of itself will make a huge difference in people's lives, because they know they're like, well, yeah, we're kind of stuck where it is that we are, but at least he heard me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, my only regret is that I didn't get you to show your beautiful singing voice to everybody.
Yeah,
That would have
another
been
time,
wonderful.
you and I can sing a duet.
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
great. All right. Well, again, this has been wonderful to interview you, and this conversation has been brought to you by the committee to elect Brent Clapp. Thank you for joining us on this EO Alive candidate conversation. I really appreciate everybody tuning in and the questions, and we look forward to seeing you on the next candidate conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you for showing up.
Yeah.